Hi everyone, it's Brandon Aponte here. I got my two audience members, my girlfriend Mackenzie and my mother Melissa. Um, so I will hand it off to them and I'll start the filming here. Okay, my demonstration is going to be how AT&T Uverse service works. Have you ever wondered where your TV signal comes from or how it works? Or even wonder why the cable guy always seems to have to run a new line whenever he comes in? By the end of my speech, you will learn the process for which we install Uverse services and how it works. I'm going to be breaking down my speech into three main points. Where the signal comes from, how it's installed and what kind of equipment we use, and of course how it works. So, my first point is where does the signal come from? With AT&T Uverse, your signal actually originates from what's called the central office. Most of you probably don't even see them or realize them, but there's actually about 10 to 15 of them here in the Toledo area. The main one that you probably have seen and not even known about is actually downtown, right by Fifth Third Field. There's a big tall AT&T building. There's actually a central office in the basement there. Nobody's allowed in there without access, without proper ID, like all its employees carry. Basically from there your signal goes through fiber optic cable to what's called a node. A node is basically just a giant computer housing that just routes signals. From there it goes to what's called a crossbox. A crossbox basically sits right next to this node, and that's basically where us as technicians route your signal from the office to your personal home. So basically from there it goes from the crossbox to what's called a terminal or a pedestal. Most of you probably see the lines out back, or you see big tall green what looks like little holes in the ground. Those are actually access terminals for us to route your signal. Most of the time you'll see what's called drop wire. This is an aerial drop wire, which means it's basically used from the pole to your house. It usually comes in two pairs, blue and orange. And what happens is we'll tie these into the terminal, run your drop to your house, and then tie it into your inside wiring from there. The other method, of course, is buried, which we have a different type of wire for, but it's the same concept. Basically, when we do our install and we get to the house, we start up at the terminal or the pedestal, and we'll check for signal. And this is where we run into most of our problems with Uverse when it's first installed. You could have any sort of line trouble or stuff like that. Another common problem with Uverse services is improper grounding, and believe it or not, this plays a huge role with your TV picture quality and your internet speed. Most people do not realize that. If your electrical or your Uverse service is not grounded, you could see TV pixelation, you could have slow browsing on your internet, you could even lose service altogether. And even worse, without your electrical to your house grounded, any sort of storm or anything like that can cause a fire. So next we're going to move on to how Uverse is installed. Once we have good signal to the outside, we make our way to the house with a drop wire. From there we have what's called a network interface. Most of you probably don't even really realize it because nobody really pays attention to what's on the outside of their house. A network interface is basically, if you've ever seen a cable box, it's roughly the same thing. They're usually located right next to the power meter for grounding purposes and stuff like that. Basically what these units do is they house the connection between the outside and the inside of the house. This was regulated by the government to make sure that there's a separation so that we know who owns what and what we are responsible for and what the customer is responsible for. Once we know that we have good sync to the house, that is when we move on and do our survey with the customer to see where they would like everything to go. We'll walk through and ask you how many TVs you have, where do you want them, stuff like that. And contrary to popular belief, we actually locate our modems right next to our main DVR boxes. And I'll actually show you a little example over here at my house, which I have Uverse services. I have my modem right here, and my DVR is actually down here in the cabinet. And this a little different than what people are used to because they're used to putting their modem inside their office next to their computer. With UVerse, it's actually better to keep it right by your DVR so that the system can work optimally. And for people with desktop computers, we have wireless adapters and stuff like that to make everything work for you. So the type of wiring that we use is another thing that kind of surprises people. I've gone into a ton of houses that, everyone's pointing out cable jacks to me. Well, unfortunately, I have to let them know that we're the telephone company and we don't use cable lines. And I'm going to explain to you right now why that is. So here's your typical cable wire. And the cable company uses this from their nodes all the way into your modem and all the way to feed all your TVs. As you can see, it's a single bare copper wire with some insulation wrapped around the outside and then a rubber coating over that. This is fine and everything, but you see a lot of interference on it, and the fittings on them that you end up putting on go bad pretty quickly, especially if they're sitting outside. What AT&T has done is we've taken what's called Cat 5 enhanced wiring, and basically what this wiring is, instead of one wire, it is actually 4 sets of wires. And depending on what kind of service you have, we bring it in on 1 or 2 sets of wires. And what that does is it distributes the data better, and this twist allows less interferences to get in there with your service. And as you can see, the wire is actually a little less thick than the coax is, so it's less of a nuisance, and it's easier for us to run and to make it look like it's not there. So it's actually pretty nice for us to use. Most customers are pretty open about letting us use it, and it works really well for us. So after we determine the modem location, everything like that, we'll run that Cat 5 line to the modem, and from there we will hook up our DVR on the same Cat 5 wire. We don't hook up any of our boxes on coax. We use this wire all the time. So hook up your main DVR on Cat 5 as well. And from there, if you have any additional TVs, we can do 2 wireless TVs, which is actually something that's exclusive to us and DirecTV. So no one else really has them except for us. And basically what that allows you to do is it allows you to move your TV anywhere you want without having any sort of TV outlet. And it's really nice to take out on the patio or whatever. So it's a really good selling point for our services. Now I kind of want to touch briefly on the difference between UVerse and cable. UVerse is an IPTV service, which is kind of unique for this region. The only other places that have it are Frontier, after they bought out Verizon Fios. That's really the only IPTV service besides Google Fiber. Those are really the only 2 other people that do IPTV service. What makes it unique is, and especially from cable, is when you have cable installed, you're all pulling off of one tap. You're all sharing one line from the whole way back. With UVerse, you have your own wire dedicated to you from our node all the way to your house. So you're not sharing your bandwidth with anyone. That's why you won't see those peak cutout times like you see with cable. And it's definitely better than dish because obviously every time it rains, you lose your signal for your TV. So you don't really see that too much with UVerse services. Okay, so basically, that's all you really need to know about AT&T UVerse. I gave you the rough run through of what we do and how we do, and I just want to go over what I'm wearing. This is your typical AT&T uniform. We have a polo collared shirt that we're required to wear. We also are required to wear our name badges that have to be visible all day, and then any sort of cargo or khaki pants, so anything like that. So through this presentation, you should have learned where the signal comes from, how it's installed, and how it works. Hopefully I've demonstrated how something as simple as TV and internet can be actually a very complex system, and hopefully you guys are a little more lenient with this as we come out to do installs and stuff like that, okay? Thank you.